Hello everyone, and welcome to the dark and stormy version of our live stream. It's candlelit. We decided to set the mood, make this a romantic one. So pour your glass of wine, and get ready for the hangout.
We're trying to conserve electricity.
We don't have our lighting kit with us as per usual. So this will be the moody version of our live stream. Thanks for being here. We will be donating the super chats this week to Rose Hip Medic Collective.
Yes, and
Tell
also
us about them.
let us know that you are here. If you're here,
if you're here, say hi.
Let us know.
And
this is working.
Say whether it's working. Yeah.
Rose Hip Medic Collective is a group of frontline medics that are based in Portland, Oregon, which folks might know is a bit of a hot spot. And medics are complete badasses. They are the folks that make sure that we're safe on the front lines. They do everything from treat some small wounds to more severe issues. So yeah, please, if you can, head on over to youtube.com/momentofclarity
Mm-hmm.
and all of the donations via, not Snapchat, what is it called?
Super chat.
Super chat.
Not Snapchat.
I'm old.
Hello to everyone saying hello. Thank you guys for joining us. As we mentioned before you showed up, probably, that we don't have our lighting with us.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you, Reese, for the first donation.
Hair character cheerfully blowing. A party horn.
Wow. Wow. Can you just...
I only saw that. I only saw it. It was like this. It was like this. It said parrot character cheerfully blowing. But I guess it's good that it's cheerful, not sad.
Well, listen. If you're going to donate $5, you get your money's worth here, all right? A parrot character will blow you. Like a Paul Giamatti style character.
Aww. That's sad.
Thank you all for joining us. So, as most of you know, or maybe many of you know, we when we do these, we donate all the super chats. We're donating Rose Hip Medic Collective this week. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think, because we weren't on last week, was Food Not Bombs. And I don't have the exact number in front of me. I think we donated somewhere around $400 to Food Not Bombs. So thank you all for being a part of this. Now let's get to the topics. Let's talk. One thing I wanted to talk about because everyone's flipping out about it is Trump's tweet about how we maybe need to delay the elections, and everyone's flipping the fuck out. And yes, if the elections were delayed, you should flip the fuck out. I don't think the elections are going to be delayed, A. B, he poses a question. He's just fucking with everybody because he's a troll. He's a natural born troll. And he knows that this covers up some other media cycle. So whatever he wanted to cover up, he just tweets out, oh, I'm going to move the elections, and everyone shits their pants and then talks about it for 5 straight days.
Well, also, I'd just like to point out that while our form of government is shit, it's not the type of government where the president could just postpone the elections by tweeting about it. That's not actually how it works. So,
now, there are so many problems with our elections, which I have gone through endlessly for years now on Redacted Tonight, on other channels. There are so many problems with our election system. But that is, in this case, that's not what we're talking about. He wants to stop mail-in voting because he knows that if there's a lot of mail-in voting, he will lose easily. But mail-in voting was already a major problem. So there's also that discussion that they're never willing to have. Mail-in voting was 22% already gets thrown out of mail-in voting. So anyway, the media doesn't have the discussion about how our elections are a fucking catastrophe. Instead, they just talk about how Trump's upset about them, and in a different way, because he wants to rig the elections. He wants to create his own version of election fraud. Anyway, I think the discussion is not being had accurately. I don't think he's going to move the election. We had elections during the Civil War, all right? We can manage an election in tough times. Thank you, Tony, for the donation.
Thank you, Tony. And again, the donations via Super Chat are going to Rose Hip Medic Collective, a medic collective that is based in Portland, Oregon. But so I also think that it's important to place the elections in the sort of framework that makes sense, because while obviously if somebody just says, oh, we're not having elections, that's fucked up. But let's also talk about what our elections really do. And I'm talking specifically here about the presidential elections. The color MAGA hat that's in the White House has very little bearing on the workings of the US empire. So it's important to recognize that our power will never come from the ballot box, particularly because that ballot box is completely rigged by both parties, whether that be interstate crosscheck or black box voting or voter ID laws or what have you. So really, we have to frame this in the understanding that we have totally farcical elections to begin with. And that can be true at the same time that it's fucked up to suggest that we should not have elections. But it is important to recognize that our elections at this particular point in time are a total farce.
Yeah. As we've mentioned many times, though, we support voting. It's something you should do, but it's not going to generally change the world. Most of the change will come in other areas. However, elections, especially in down ballot areas, can be rather important and are less rigged because there's less money involved in down ballot issues. The elections are a fucking catastrophe. That doesn't mean don't vote, but it means we've got a long way to go to fix our election system, which I won't go through all of those now because I've done it so many times. I'm kind of sick of it.
Yeah, there's some good points here, David, pointing out that you're not going to get universal health care or housing unless you shut shit down. The Watchmen also pointing out that you have to have a choice in an election. Bad and worse is not much of a choice.
Greg Hill, we'll only spend a minute on this because I know most of you are not in Sweden, but Greg Hill would like you to talk about Swedish elections.
Well, Swedish elections, I will say this, is that there are more people to choose from.
Yes, Stewie, we do look darker than usual. We are trying a new look. We're trying on a new look. No, as we said before, many of you joined. We don't have our lighting set up with us, so this is the down and dirty version of the live stream. Getting naughty in the dark.
So Sweden has a parliamentary system, which means that you can get a certain percentage of the vote, and then you get a seat in the parliament. So it's a different system. That's not to say that it's not rife with corruption in its own way. And Sweden actually has a big problem with moving to the right and following the U.S. on a lot of things, not least of all in terms of weapons sales and corporate takeover with the healthcare system. So Sweden has a shit ton of problems, but it does also you have access to more parties. It's not a two-party system by any means. And so you have more access to parties. The problem is that a lot of times parties create these coalitions, like a coalition government, so that you kind of get this like nebulous glob of inaction.
Nebulous glob of inaction is better than two parties only allowed in your political system.
Okay, look, I'm basically just saying that like Sweden's system is different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it works better. It's just regardless, like both systems are corrupt and both systems have capacity to be very corrupt. It's just that the US system is you don't even have different flavors of corruption. You basically have one.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, moving on.
Well,
that's Lee's. I don't disagree. That's the sound Lee makes when he's done with the topic. Okay. Okay, we're done.
You had another topic you wanted to switch to, correct? I watched you look up a lot of topics. You don't.
Shit, I forgot.
All right then. Well, what else do people want to talk about? Let's talk about that. People being disappeared in various cities, grabbed up by police in Portland and New York, and I think Chicago as well. In New York, people said NYPD was doing it, which is different than the federal agents that Trump sent to Portland. But obviously, all of this is horrifying and unconstitutional and disgusting, and should really just add anger to all. Well, yeah, Dave says, how do you know they're police? Well, it turns out that the unmarked people in Portland and I think Chicago were under DHS. That doesn't mean they're not contracted out to, Eric Prince's new Blackwater unit or whatever, but they're under the umbrella of DHS. Anyway, were you going to talk about the people signing things saying they can't protest?
Right. So there's, and I haven't I haven't researched like the very specifics of this, but it looks like, or it sounds like there are reports of people having to sign something that basically says that they won't be a part of protests if they want to be released from custody, which is, of course, totally legal on several different levels. First of all, you have a constitutional right to protest, which I'm not saying I love our Constitution. It was fucking written more than 200 years ago by old dead white guys who owned human beings. But constitutionally speaking, it's not even a viable argument that you should force someone to sign something saying that they are giving up their First Amendment right. That's the first problem. The second problem is, of course, that if you've arrested someone without cause, then you can't actually force them to sign anything that speaks to the assumption that they've committed a crime. That's absolute bullshit. You're basically kidnapping someone and forcing them to sign something over to you that's like a kind of ransom. And this is something that I've heard of before with pipeline protests, where they demand that if we're going to drop these charges in court, then you have to say that you're not going to be in any more pipeline protests for the next like 2 years or something. And so this is something that I've heard of before, and I'm not sure of the exact terms of this bullshit that they're asking people to sign. And as I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to give people advice on what exactly to do with that. But I will say that it's absolute fucking horseshit, and that it's a grotesque development. And I would definitely, the one thing I will suggest is that we stay vigilant and always go to a protest with a buddy. Always make sure that someone knows who you are, that you have a jail support number on your arm. And if you can, stay in larger groups, because obviously it's easier to pick people off in smaller groups like this than it is in a larger group. So, and there are more tips with regards to how to protest. And actually, Rosehip Medic Collective that we're donating to via Super Chat tonight has some tips on what to prep when you're going to a protest, not just in terms of your physical safety, but also in terms of cops and things like that.
So again, all the donations tonight, if you want to just click that little $sign and throw in $1 or $2, it's going to Rosehip Medic Collective. Last week 2 weeks ago was Food Not Bombs, and it was around $350. I don't have it in front of me. Donated to Food Not Bombs. We've given all of the money from all of these live streams to great causes. So thank you so much for any of you who, $10 New Zealand, $10 New Zealand dollars donated by Sydney. Thank you. And I ended up leaving Oregon for New Zealand.
To work in a more just healthcare system.
Way to escape. Way to get the fuck out. And New Zealand has dealt with COVID-19 better than like anyone. They have like 0 cases or whatever. But and if you're on Facebook, please come over to youtube.com/moment of clarity. That way you can be part of the super chat and donate to these great causes.
This was the thing I wanted to bring up to shift the topic.
Okay.
Is that?
Oh, please share this, everybody. Take 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Take 2 seconds, tweet this out, and post it on Facebook. Okay, go ahead.
That to add more onto the shit heap of news, that 2020 is shaping up to be yet another horrific year in terms of climate change, despite the fact that there have been some good climate change mitigations thanks to COVID, folks in India were able to see the Himalaya mountains for like the first time in decades.
Thank you, BA.
But the hurricane season is upon us in the United States, and extreme weather is expected to be much worse than it was in previous years. And this is, of course, on top of
Thanks,
COVID.
Susan.
And kind of like, in some sort of like twisted poetic justice. Of course, it's not actually going to hit the people that made these policies, but it's hitting the states.
That's not poetic justice. That's the reverse.
I know. I'm sorry.
Poetic cruelty.
Poetic
and poetic fuck your mother.
Poetic justice if it could hit like the governors of these states, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But basically, these hurricanes are going to slam against the states that have like the most fucked up COVID policies, which is places like Texas and Florida and Louisiana and Georgia and, you know, those places. So it's now even more important than ever that we're supporting these kind of like frontline efforts, because while we're working on mutual aid still for COVID, it's going to become a lot worse because we're also going to be dealing with these extreme weather patterns, hurricanes, tropical storms, you name it.
Right. So with climate change, a lot of people are like, well, you know, it hits everyone equally, so maybe we can actually get something done. But the problem is the rich have the ability to avoid it. The rich have the ability to leave that home that's on the beach and let it get destroyed or sell it or whatever. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine, so much.
Really appreciate it. And you know, leave that house and go to one of their other houses. They have the ability to get out. We saw this with Katrina. We see it again and again. They have the ability to import water when there's drought, the ability to pay for extra sprinkling of their fucking lawns while people are you know, can't get clean water. So as climate change hits, it really does hit those with less money, you know, the lower class more quickly, which means there's a racial dynamic to it. And, you know, it's one of the many ways that it's a continued assault on the lower class in this world. Thank you, Greg Hill.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Canadian
Again,
$10.
if you're just joining us,
what is that, like a loony, a toonie? I don't know.
A loony. It's a loony. If you're just joining us, we are donating tonight to the Rosehip Medic Collective.
Greetings from Finland. Thank you, crafty geek.
Where does it say greetings from Finland? Oh,
the one above it.
Hello, neighbor. Okay, neighbor from where I grew up, Sweden. So, shit, what was I saying?
Donations.
Oh, we are donating. I'm a little overtired. But we are donating tonight to Rosehip Medic Collective, which is a medic collective that's based in Portland, Oregon.
What do medics do, per se?
So, thank you, Ronald. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald.
So medics, frontline medics are absolute badasses, and they are the folks that take care of the people on the front lines. A lot of them are trained EMTs, who work as EMTs.
Thanks, Jim.
In their day job. Thank you, Jim. And, wow, thank you, Carl. Or Carrie, sorry.
Carrie.
My eyesight's crappy.
Wow, thank you, Carrie. That's great. $50, folks. That's incredible.
There should be no water crisis in the U.S. I absolutely agree. So thank you so much for that. So frontline medics are oftentimes trained EMTs. They're folks that have gone through specific medic trainings to deal with the high stress situations of frontline actions. Whether that be, you know, anything from, a pipeline protest to what we're seeing right now across the United States in Portland and Chicago and et cetera. And they basically are trained in everything from, you know, making sure that someone who's been, really, really injured is stationary and they're not moving their spine or their neck, to treating scrapes and burns and, tear gas. Spray, tear gas and, rubber bullets and all kinds of things that you might encounter on the front lines, including like heat stroke. And you'd oftentimes, at a recent protest that I was at, I saw a medic walking around that had anybody need hand sanitizer or sunscreen? Right. Hand sanitizer, sunscreen. Like they're like the Jewish mothers of the protest. But then also like the EMT team.
Yes, they're serving up kugel to the people at the protest. So I knew the medics were badasses and everything, but I never really encountered a situation where I saw them being used that much. I saw them treating some people for pepper spray and stuff, but that much until we were at the protest in Charlottesville, the anti-protest against the Unite the Right protest a few years ago, 2-3 years ago. And as many of you recall, a car cut through the crowd and injured a lot of people and killed one person. It was a terrorist act. It wasn't an accident. And that guy is now in prison for life, I believe. But when it happened, the cops, and there were an endless number of cops in Charlottesville, they've been around this situation, this Unite the Rights for many days, a couple days, and they were all gone, disappeared when this shit went down. The military, which was also there, which we saw MRAPs and things like that, they were nowhere to be found. And we're talking dozens upon dozens of people with broken arms, broken legs, severe injuries, concussions, anxiety attacks, all that shit all happened within the span of 30 seconds. And of course, one person dying. And the only people that were there instantly helping everyone was medics. These street medics that were at the protest with the protesters, and they were the ones helping everyone, getting people, out of the way of harm, getting people to not move, people with neck injuries, all that shit. And they were doing it. And the next people to arrive were the firefighters and the EMTs with the firefighters. And they didn't arrive for 15 minutes or something. Right. So for 15 minutes after this incredibly traumatic event, it was only street medics that were helping everyone. So a first person example, Eleanor and I were standing right there. We watched it all, and an example of them doing amazing work. So.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal, and I've done a street medic training, but I'm not like good enough to really call myself a street medic. But having done a training, they go over pretty much everything that you can encounter. Again, like stabilizing the neck and things like that, to dealing with folks, emotional and mental stress, which is incredibly high at these protests, as a lot of folks watching this might know. So, you've got everything from like trying to, calm people down, with everything from like aromatherapy to, you've got these little like CBD pills to try and calm people's stress. So there's a lot of, street medics run the gamut of incredible, ability and skill, and need. So
Austin woke up to come watch us. That's what I like to hear. Get your asses out of bed and come watch our shit. So anyway, that's a shout out to the medics, which for those of you just joining, we're donating all of these super chat donations to Rosehip Medic Collective. You can click the little $ sign, add $1 or $2 when you comment, and donate to them. So we will move on now to another topic. Someone asked me to comment on the Ghislaine Maxwell's documents that have been unsealed. Some of the documents have been unsealed. I've only just started reading some of them. I've talked a lot about her and Epstein before, but real quick, I know the documents, I guess, or one report I saw said they show that, or the victim is claiming that Bill Clinton stayed on the private island, which is another step up for Bill Clinton. He's already been proven to have been on the Epstein flights 26 times. So these documents, and that Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz fought to get Epstein leniency in his 2008 trial. So they were really fighting to get that pedophile a lenient sentence, which they succeeded in because he was sentenced to prison without ever having to show up to prison. And I have one quote from Prince Andrew, which I find hilarious. I guess in this interview, he was asked why he went to stay with Epstein after 2008 when he'd already been convicted. Epstein had already been convicted of pedophilia. And Prince Andrew said, "I wanted to end our friendship in person. So really, I went there out of overabundance of honor." So Prince Andrew says, hindsight 2020, I shouldn't have gone, but it's because I'm too honorable. Yes. He literally said that.
And nothing's happened to him.
Literally said he went to stay with a pedophile because he's too honorable. We'll just pause and give that a moment to sink in. Anyway, I don't have much more on that. Someone asked, so I thought I'd throw in a couple of notes.
Yeah, there's so much and so little to say about this at the same time. I feel like I've said it all.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes it feels repetitive, but. Yeah.
But some I can't.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. I can't. I don't know who noted it, but somebody commented like, "Why do we still have royals?" Yes, that's a great question.
Also, that too.
Thank you, Tony. Well, and it's not like the prince is the only person that's guilty of feeding to the pedophile ring, but it just speaks to this idea that you're born into. Thank you, Lene. You're born into this system where literally your only job is to like come out a couple of times a year and wave at people. Like that's literally like the only fucking thing that these people do. And
good question for the crowd. Do you think royals should still exist?
I'm assuming that there are no royalists in this crowd today, but it's weird because like I know people, here in Sweden we still have a royal family, and I know people that are, they're not as left as I am, but I know people that are leftist, and they're like, but I also think that the royal family is kind of cozy. And I'm like, cozy? You pay taxes like the hundreds of thousands of dollars every year so that you can get them to dress up in traditional Swedish clothing a few times a year and wave at you out of a carriage. Like, what the fuck? That's absurd. It's so pointless.
Well, and just the idea of, even if people say, oh, I like the tradition of such and such, just the idea of these people are only in that position, even if you said the position makes sense, which that's a separate argument, but obviously it's easy to say it doesn't make sense. But even if you say the position makes sense, that your blood gives it to you, you just, he had the blood in him. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, unless you're hyper-religious and you're like, the Lord designated that old lady shall sit there and go, hello, everybody, I am a millionaire, or billionaire, whatever. Like, unless you're that hyper-religious, it doesn't make any sense at all. It was just it came out of her womb and just bloop another royal. Really? Did anyone accidentally bloop a non-royal out? Or no, it's just in the blood.
Yeah, no, it's some bullshit, and it really speaks to how. Thank you, Action.
This is not true though. Oh, not that.
Oh, wait, what?
Not that. We're working on it.
I can't.
Here we go.
That's bullshit. Sorry. That is neither brilliant nor wonderful.
we like you, brilliant and wonderful. I know you've been here before, and you're good. You're a good fan for being here, but that's incorrect.
Sweden is having, as a Swede, let me say this: Sweden is having an incredible surge in COVID cases. Sweden is a
compared to other similar areas like Netherlands and Finland, and
I think you're trying to say Norway.
No, I'm not trying to say Norway. I just got it wrong.
Well, it's a thing that Americans do sometimes. What's the difference between Switzerland and Sweden, or the Netherlands and Norway?
It sounded like you said the same word 4 times right there.
Exactly, that's my point. So Sweden is
thanks, Crafty.
Is a hotspot of COVID, and it is because Sweden decided to go with this whole let's just choose herd immunity, like it was a multiple choice and you could just choose to use herd immunity. But that's not how science works, unfortunately. And Sweden is finding this out the hard way. And just a little side note here, the guy who's the head of the coronavirus, decision-making task force or whatever, Daniel, is not an epidemiologist. He is a fucking politician that just decided that this was the right thing to do, because unfortunately, again, Sweden is taking after the U.S. in taking after the U.S. in the idea of being like, oh well, let's just appoint people who have nothing to do with the fucking thing they're supposed to do, and because
also there's a So Sweden is a hotspot of COVID. There's also another
terribly. And here's the other thing: is that Sweden's argument was also, well, it's going to hurt our economy. Sweden's economy is doing very shitty regardless, because guess what? It's a global fucking economy. So you can't just say, well, we decided it's not a big deal for us because Sweden's part of a global market economy.
Can I also say that there's another point to be made about Sweden, which is even if it were doing better, Sweden has universal health care. And so the number, and so people are fine with going to the doctor. They get good treatment. Well, hold on. Let me finish. Can I finish? Mm-hmm. Sweden, there are people fine going to the doctor. They get generally good treatment, good enough treatment. They're also, like in the U.S., people, especially in Black and brown communities and indigenous communities, are scared of the doctor. They know they could end up with some kind of crazy bill that destroys their life. And so people are unlikely to go and get that testing done. This causes something like coronavirus or many other things to spread and cause more harm. So the fact that there is a healthcare system here that is not fucking catastrophic makes a big difference.
Yes and no. So Sweden's, well, I'm sorry. This is something that's pissed me off for a while, is that while Sweden has universal healthcare, their healthcare system has long had problems because it keeps trying to privatize a la the United States. I know people personally in Sweden who have had a lot of problems with Swedish healthcare because they're running out of doctors. They're running out of. There's not enough.
Of course, there's issues, but that's nothing compared to the U.S., where people are afraid to go.
It's nothing compared to the U.S., but we shouldn't pedestal the Swedish system because
I wasn't saying it was perfect.
No, I'm saying, but your comment that Sweden has universal health care, so things are cool. They're not. There are so many problems in the Swedish healthcare system. I could go off. I'm not going to, but there's a lot of issues with the Swedish healthcare system, and people have written plenty of articles saying that a lot of Swedish hospitals are experiencing issues that look like third world countries because they're having to treat people in fucking hallways because they don't have enough beds and enough doctors to see people. So Swedish healthcare is not doing well
compared to U.S. You don't have your life savings gone within a year.
No, you don't.
An illness.
No, you don't.
Okay, but that's all I meant. And people, therefore, aren't afraid to go to the doctor. I know there are issues.
Well,
thank you, Bev.
But okay, as a Swede, I feel like it's important to
I know, but I've also talked to many Swedes as well that talk about the fact that they nearly cut their finger off and they went and they paid $70.
I'm not even 70.
Sorry, 7.
I'm saying you are correct, but I think it's important to note that Sweden is having a lot of problems because it is following in the footsteps of the U.S.
I'm fine with noting it has problems.
Okay, well then don't get all snippy.
You're the one who's getting snippy.
I'm not getting snippy. I'm just saying that, you know what this
is?
See,
this is poor lighting, because we put in the poor lighting. If we had the lighting set up here, then we wouldn't be in the dark. It wouldn't be a moody issue.
You need nuance on a subject like this. You need nuance.
You do.
It's not this is good and this is bad. It's that both are varying hues of not great.
All right, let's go to another topic. What else do we got, folks? What's next on your list? You were looking up a bunch of things earlier.
You already said that, and then I talked about climate change.
Oh, okay. Climate change. What else people want to talk about? The lighting is too comfortable, they say. Let's see. You guys have lighting? No, not really. We you mean
Someone
regularly?
Asked who has more tattoos?
We have lighting. Eleanor has a lot more tattoos. I only have 2.
A lot more.
I only have 2. Don't you?
I thought you had 3.
I have 2 tattoos.
Are you sure?
No, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Brokenezes. Want to talk more about Julian Assange? All right, I'll take you up on that challenge. The latest update on Assange, most of you know that he's, basically being tortured in Belmarsh prison. Which
is also a COVID hotspot.
He looks terrible. He's gaunt and, he's not being fed well. He's not getting mental activity. They're not letting him see his lawyers. They often won't let him see his lawyers for weeks at a time. It really is the opposite of allowing him to prepare a defense for his extradition trial, which is a laughingstock. So they now have brought more indictments against him involving hacking, which are also laughable. They were all, the claims all come from FBI, either informants or FBI infiltrators. And they keep delaying the trial. And the belief is that they're delaying the trial because they don't have a quality case to actually get this extradition. That's the main reason. The secondary reason might be that they want the trial to happen after the election, because Trump is afraid that if the Assange trial happens, there's no extradition and he gets freed, then it will look bad for Trump right before the election. So,
sorry.
So anyway, that's what I have as an update for Assange. Your support for him is still incredibly important. The only way he's ever going to get out of this and not be shipped to the U.S. to be further tortured for life is if people stand up and fight back and continue to call everyone out. I mean, it's disgusting. It's repulsive that the mainstream media is not standing up for him, considering he's a journalist. He's probably the most famous political prisoner in the world right now. It's just so repulsive on every level. So,
yeah, no, and there are there's a lot of groups and organizations. There's coalitions that are working on raising awareness about Assange and really keeping the momentum up, because of course with our news cycles being what they are, it's easy for something like Assange to just fall to the wayside. But it's very important that we keep up on this because it really is vital, not just from a human rights perspective, but just from a journalistic and a publishing perspective. And a lot of
thank you, Stewie.
Thank you, Stewie. I know that you've talked about this before, Lee. That the fact that we wouldn't have a lot of the movements that we have around the world were it not for WikiLeaks, and so it's important that we recognize that and really support.
Thanks, Ryan.
Support Assange in every way that we can. So.
Yeah, WikiLeaks has created a lot of change around the world, and people don't give it the credit. I mean, I think some people don't know, and then the people that do know don't want to give it the credit because they stand up for the corporatocracy, the standard ruling elite, the mainstream corporate media. They don't want to admit that WikiLeaks has created far more change and transparency than the mainstream media could ever hope to talk about. I hope to do.
Yes, indeed.
I know. We were talking about a little more about the defense budget, that they put a bill forward to cut 10% from the Pentagon budget, which is roughly $1 trillion. It's $738 billion. That's on the books, and then more in black budget for black sites and things like that. Cut 10% from it. They put forward a bill in the House to cut 10%, and the House is run by the Democrats, right? Cut 10%. 60% of Democrats voted against it. All of the Republicans, I think, voted against it, and it lost pretty handily. And that's just cutting 10%. That's not doing what should be done, which is cut like 80% or some shit, like cut most of it. And they couldn't even get 10% reduction on our insane military.
And this came shortly after or around the same time, I believe, that the Democratic platform, or the DNC platform, which I know doesn't mean anything anyway, but it's indicative, what they decide to have as part of their platform really kind of shows who they are. This came shortly after, in the midst of a pandemic, when the Democrats voted, I believe it was 125 to 30 something, they did not want universal health care.
On the platform.
Right.
And the platform doesn't even change anything.
I know. It's not even on the platform. They're not even at the point where they're like, well, we'll make it part of the platform and then we'll just not do it. Like, they don't even want to go that far. So yeah. And this is, the idea that they would never want to cut the Pentagon budget. And at the same time, they shrug their shoulders and they're like, well, I'd love to give you universal health care, but we couldn't possibly afford it. As I noted in a recent radio show discussion, the Affordable Care Act is neither affordable nor caring. Millions of tens of millions of people are left without any fucking insurance. Millions more are underinsured, which means that, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, you have insurance, but it doesn't cover nearly enough, particularly if you have, things like chronic illnesses, or you have something crop up like cancer or something like that, or an emergency even. And another thing is, between February and May, 5 million people lost health insurance because it was employer-based health insurance, and another 10 million are expected to lose that health insurance by December. So,
and Lene would like to, and that has to do with like our healthcare should not be connected to our jobs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's bullshit.
I can't seem to get this to scroll.
Because you're trying to scroll like the entire.
But anyway,
there we go. I guess you can.
Lene was asking about Kamala Harris being Biden's VP choice, which is not that VP has zero power and president has less power than people think, but except for that. Kamala Harris is a fucking catastrophe. I mean, she's a former cop. She's a former prosecutor. She's helped put more people in prison in California than ever. It's disgusting when her office, and she claims she didn't know or whatever, but when her office was faced with the decision of whether to release California inmates, some of them nonviolent ones, because the prisons are completely overcrowded, and a million people to a bed, when they were tasked with that, they chose not to, or they said they would not be releasing people because they needed it would hurt California's labor market. Meaning these prisoners are the ones, sewing your clothes and answering call centers and shit for $1 a day.
Yeah, and recently California ran into some other issues because they were having forest fires in the midst of the COVID outbreak, and they weren't able to get their usual labor, which is basically prison labor, because there were COVID outbreaks in the prisons. So they were in a bit of a jam there. California is a total mess when it comes to the prison industrial complex, and Kamala Harris has been an integral part of that. And
Greg Hill has a great point. She let Mnuchin off the hook when something to do with all the foreclosures and everything, prosecuting them after 2008, and she chose not to because she and big banks and Wall Street are in bed, and she knew it would be good for her later. And here we are talking about her as a VP possibility. But VPs don't matter, and really Biden's just hoping to win this by staying in a basement, and nobody will ever ask him a question, and hopefully he'll just hide there until it's over.
God, yeah, no, that's. Yeah, what color MAGA hat do you want to vote for in November? Blue or red?
Exactly. What other topics people got going? Wow, big donation from Stina. Save the forest, burn the system.
Amen.
Agree to that. Yes, we need to save the forest. That's an important point.
If you're just joining us, all of our donations via Super Chat are going to Rosehip Medic Collective, a frontline medic collective based in Portland, Oregon. If you're watching this on Facebook and you'd like to donate, please head over to youtube.com/momentofclarity, and that's where you can do you start typing a comment and there's a $sign, something. So
thank you, Vienna. Yes, little $sign underneath your comment when you're typing. You'll see the little $sign, and you can add a donation. Because I can't remember who it was. Let's see. Stina donated so generously and said, "Save the forests." I wanted to talk about that for a second. That is an important step to ending climate change, to bettering the system. Now, it has to be. Thank you, cheapskate. But apparently not.
Apparently, I disagree.
I disagree.
Thank you.
$20 donation. Really appreciate it. Forests and trees are incredibly important. Just planting any trees that's not the answer. You can't just fucking fill the land with random trees that don't fit in that area. You have to consider the landscape and what trees are important and those kind of things. But that is one of the steps. There's so many steps. One recently covered on Redacted Tonight is, or maybe it's tonight's Redacted Tonight. I don't know. It airs in a few hours maybe.
Watch it.
Yeah, whatever. But is rock dust, putting rock dust on the farmland apparently both helps the farmland and also gets carbon out of the air, but that's not going to do it all. So we can't just do that. It's kind of got to be a piecemeal solution where we rewild our landscape, we plant trees, we stop, driving every day for fucking 18 hours. Like stop using fossil fuels. There's so many steps to it. And we're just like not acting on 90% of them.
But forests are vital, and it's not just about planting new ones, it's about protecting the ones that we have, which is why stopping logging efforts is super important. There's a lot of logging fights happening right now in the Pacific Northwest. The one I'm thinking of in particular is the logging fight in a place that's known as Rainbow Ridge, which is redwood forests up in the very northern part of California, close to Eureka.
For those of you who haven't seen redwoods, fucking go do it. It's if you have any means to get there. I don't know how long they'll last, but these 200-year-old trees that are fucking glorious.
But people are working hard to protect them, so I do recommend that folks look into any and every logging fight that you can find and support that, because it's not just about planting new trees. We have to protect the forests that we have. Vienna asked, speak on the gentrification aspect of Breonna Taylor's murder. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, I know a little bit about that.
Oh.
Natalie McGill covered it on Redacted tonight. I think it was Natalie. Yes, Natalie. And it's really fascinating that apparently the reason they were going into this neighborhood and arresting random people and trying to kick them, get them arrested to make their lives hell, to get them out, was because of gentrification. So they wanted to take over this area. They wanted the poor people out, specifically the black people, I'm sure, but let's just say poor people out. And so they were doing everything they could to make their lives miserable, to offer to buy the places for, I think they offered, it was either $1 or they offered him $1 to buy his place out, or, and his place was worth $17,000. So anyway, the reason they were breaking into Breonna Taylor's place and ended up shooting and killing her was because they thought they were breaking into one of the other places where a drug dealer lived, or they claimed a drug dealer lived. And the reason these raids were happening was to clear out the neighborhood. They wanted to gentrify the neighborhood, and they'd already done it with a lot of the places. So her place was like next on the list. And so the death of Breonna Taylor is directly connected to gentrification.
Yeah, no, I hadn't, I wasn't aware of that. That's,
this is, whoever asked this question, this is a big deal, because Eleanor knows fucking everything. And every news story
that is not true.
No, it is true. Every news story I try and tell her about, she's like, yeah, I retweeted that like 3 years ago.
Okay, well, first of all,
good for you. You win 2 points.
Okay, I've taken a few days off because I had hit a bit of a wall, so that's why it's been a little quiet for me recently on the social media sites. But yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Vienna, or not ours, mine, the royal we. We're back at the Royals. So, there was another question, but I can't remember what it was now.
Someone else is saying, kill your lawn and plant a garden. And I think this is a great point, that lawns are a ridiculous kind of modern idea, that we don't realize that these lawns didn't really exist until, 50, maybe 100 years ago, but they didn't become popular until 50 years ago. Like, there's no reason you should cut down every fucking plant around your house.
Grass is so thirsty. Grass is incredibly
and meaningless.
thirsty.
And meaningless. Like bees and things can't come pollinate.
No one cares.
So letting your yard rewild is or planting a garden is so important for the biodiversity of the area. But we're just fucking paving everything and putting in yards that are just lawn covered, and they're pointless.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a lot of, we've talked about this in our mutual aid group as well, is, the importance of urban farming, taking over spaces that have been lawns, that can be used to grow food for the community, food that is not laced with pesticides, food that can actually nourish people who live in food deserts, which are, places that don't have access to fresh food. So this is what.
Sorry, someone Snake said, "How can you demonstrate your conformity to the community without having a lawn?" Great point.
True. That's true. This is why, I mean, so part of me would like to have a house just because it would be nice to like, you know, have like a studio and I would like to grow food. But you know, we can do that in community settings. But the idea of having a home in one of these like spaces where people are like, you know, telling on you to the homeowners association,
yeah, they have
because
like
your fucking fences is whatever the fuck, your lawn is.
You get fined if you get fined if you don't mow enough.
I would set fire to someone's lawn. I wouldn't be able to help myself.
No, but it's so sad that like Roundup herbicide and all the other herbicides have killed so much of the like insects, and like the biodiversity has just plummeted in America and many other places because Roundup herbicide, which also causes cancer in humans, but it's just killed all the insects. So you have grass doing great, or your wheat doing great, but there's no fucking butterflies, assholes.
I think you're the only person to ever say the word asshole after the word butterfly.
There's no butterflies, you fucking cunts.
So Shelley, I'm highlighting this question because it's something that I've talked about a lot. How would you recommend to persuade the has-beens in the white rural small towns in the Rust Belt that it would be a good idea to stand up for the dignity of other working class people of different religions or ethnicities? So the first thing I would say is that this is part of their history. It is part of white, poor, working class history to stand with and for the poor and oppressed of other religions and ethnicities. For instance, the term redneck comes from mine workers in West Virginia and Kentucky who tied red bandanas around their necks and marched together, white, black, immigrant, who marched together and fired on.
That's in Eleanor's film, Hard Road of Hope.
It is, and fired on you know these coal barons to fight for their basic workers' rights. So I think something that's pretty powerful is connecting ourselves to our history. There's a very strong feeling of connection to your past, you know, whoever you are. And I think that there's a certain power in that, of letting these rural white areas know that their history is a very radical one, and connecting them to that and making the connection to these struggles, that the struggle of, you know, poor black and brown communities is also the struggle of the poor white community. And it's important that we recognize that while those struggles are different, of course, because we're also in a white supremacist nation, it's important to recognize the similarities and that we can build around these similarities. But not only that, we can build for the kind of world that we want to have. So one of the things that I've found is fruitful in organizing poor white communities is, hey, do you think that you should have to go bankrupt because you don't have health insurance? Or hey, do you think it's fair that your boss doesn't pay your pensions? And when you start to ask these questions, of course, nobody's going to say, yeah, I think that these rich assholes should get to kill me and take my livelihood. So really kind of like teasing out these, not just what connects us in terms of our oppression, but in terms of what we'd like to see. And if you try to remove that from any sort of ism, because of course a lot of these folks are also trained to be afraid of words like socialism or anarchism or things like that. So separating it from terms like that, and instead having these conversations about like what kind of autonomy or self-determination would you like to see, and that is a really powerful organizing tool that I found. So I think, and also understanding, I had this conversation with a friend of mine, understanding that it's slow work. Undoing decades of propagandization is difficult, and it takes a lot of building with and in these communities. So I think partnering with these communities, particularly with people who already live there, as opposed to just coming in as an outsider, is really, really powerful. Sorry for the monologue.
I enjoyed it. That's why I let it go.
That's why you let it go.
I thought we should ride it out. That was beautiful. And some people are saying very kind comments about your movie. I think everyone should check it out. hardroadofhope.com. We only have a few minutes left here. I wanted to address something I believe it was No Option said, and I think he or she was being facetious when they said, when are they giving out the free handouts again so I can delay going back to work?
Right.
Listen, this really, you should not view it as a free handout. This is a small amount of money given to mainly the most exploited of our society, who are having trouble in a pandemic that our federal government has completely failed to help people through. And so this amount of money, $1,200, is breadcrumbs compared to the trillions, yes, trillions with a T, that has been given to big banks and large corporations, even much of the small business loans, which are not going to poor individuals, they're going to small businesses. Even those were stolen by things like the Lakers and the fucking, Ayn Rand Institute and all these places that stole up the small business loans. So really, this is not so I can delay going back to work, please give me a handout, Mr. Free thing. No.
I think they're being sarcastic.
I think they are being sarcastic, but I'm just arguing. I'm arguing with all of Fox News and everyone who believes that shit. The people in America and many countries, anyone who's getting paid a few bucks an hour, our minimum wage is still $7 an hour or whatever federally. You're wildly exploited. Wildly, your life is being stolen from you, so that people can become millionaires. And the fact that a $1,200 check is sent out is breadcrumbs. Yeah.
And not only that, but we're looking at the measly $600 unemployment benefits dropping down to $200. So it's really but I did see that there were some other questions. We're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes here, but please do come back next time. And I want to ask folks, what would you prefer? The next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing either like a 5 p.m. on a Friday, or we could do like a Sunday afternoon. So wondering how people feel about that. Would you prefer a Sunday afternoon? And I'm doing times in Eastern, so Sunday afternoon would be like, I don't know, like
3, 4, or 5 p.m. Eastern,
Eastern, or a Friday. So, or another day.
You can respond here even after we're done, finish filming. You can feel free to keep chatting, but also you can email us. What's the best email? Proton Mail. commoncensored@protonmail.com, I believe.
I mean, you could also tweet.
That's our podcast, by the way.
You could tweet at one of us. Yeah. So
I'm going to give some quick promo for our other free podcast, which if you enjoyed this, you'd love the podcast. Eleanor's is called Act Out, which there's been several new episodes recently, right?
Yes. That reminds me, I should have to do that soon. I have a bi-monthly podcast called Act Out that gets kind of where I step into the nerdery a lot of the times. And then we have a podcast called Common Censored.
Then we have a podcast together called Common Censored.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have one with
I have one with Graham Elwood called Government Secrets. So that's 3 podcasts. Actually, there's another one called Moment of Clarity that is all the audio from Redacted Tonight. So that's 4 podcasts that you could listen to every week. You could have 4 hours of just about every week of our podcast. And I highly recommend you check it out.
And don't forget, in just a couple of hours, you can watch Lee again.
The Redacted Tonight.
Oh, wow.
Thank
just
you.
in the nick of time.
Nick of time.
Thank you.
And that donation, as we've said, is going to Rosehip Medic Collective.
Yes, frontline medics.
But yes, Redacted Tonight, I'll put it in here.
Was that 8 or 8:30?
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern.
So the full episodes are now at portable.tv or the portable.tv app, which you can download for free. It's all free. But you can also get the opening 10 minutes or whatever will be up at YouTube as well for free to watch at 8 p.m. So
It's good shit. What am I forgetting? Oh, my documentary. Thank you, everyone who's seen it and who appreciated it. I very much appreciate that. Please do share it with folks that you know. Really trying to amplify these voices from West Virginia. That is up at hardroadofhope.com. And you can find out more about the projects that I do over at artkillingapathy.com. And yeah, feel free to tweet at us if there's anything that you'd like to throw out there, at activist Eleanor, at Lee Camp.
I'm trying to figure out whether Fred is serious. Saying hood for Trump? I hope not.
Well, GTFOH, I think, means get the fuck out of here.
I believe it does, but I don't know if he's. Yeah.
You know what? This is like the problem. Okay, well, people might not. This is the last thing. People might not remember this, but like back in the day when texting first started becoming a thing, I got into so many fights with people because this wasn't a thing yet, and there's no inflection in just a text, right? And so like your roommate or something would text and be like, fine. And you're like, well, fuck you, fine. And they're like, no, I literally meant it's fine, you fucking angry asshole. Like this is the problem with, there's no inflection. So when somebody writes
you're saying you always read the worst into it.
I do.
They say fine and you view fine.
I do.
All right. Well, thank you guys again so much, and thank you for all who donated. Your money will be well spent for the medics across the country.
Yes, thank you.
And enjoy Redacted tonight, and I will see you soon. Feel free to hang out and keep chatting with everybody.
Yeah. Until next time.